The living room felt small and tense as I looked at my mom, Linda, and my younger sister, Nancy. Nancy had just told us that she and her husband, Eric, needed a place to stay because they were having a hard time. Mom's face lit up with excitement, like a kid opening Christmas presents. "Of course, you two can stay here," Mom said with a big smile, pulling Nancy into a warm hug. "We'll make room for you." "No problem." My heart sank. This was our home, a small 3-bedroom house I had worked hard to maintain. But, as usual, my own needs didn't seem to matter. Trying to stay calm, I said, "Mom, can I talk to you for a minute?" I didn't want to sound upset, but it was hard to hide. Without even looking at me, Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Not now, Carol. We need to get the guest room ready for Nancy and Eric," she said. Nancy gave me a smug smile, clearly enjoying all the attention she was getting. My fists clenched as I tried to control the anger building inside me. "This isn't just your decision," I said, raising my voice slightly. "I live here too, and I don't agree with them moving in without talking about it first." Mom's smile faded, and her face grew serious. "Watch your tone, young lady," she said firmly. "Nancy is family, and family comes first." "But what about me?" I asked, my voice trembling with hurt. "I've sacrificed so much to keep this house running, and you treat me like I don't matter." Mom's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, pointing a finger at me. "If you can't accept your sister's situation, maybe you should find somewhere else to live." Her words felt like a slap in the face. Behind her, Nancy smirked, clearly enjoying the drama. "Fine, Mom," I said, my voice shaking with anger and pain. "Maybe I will." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and stormed out of the living room, tears stinging my eyes. I had finally reached my breaking point. In my room, I paced back and forth as tears streamed down my face. How could my mom be so cold after everything I had done? I had worked hard to keep our home running, but now Mom was pushing me aside to make room for Nancy and her husband, who could never keep a job. My thoughts were spinning when a knock at the door interrupted me. "Carol, we need to talk." Mom's irritated voice came from the other side. I flung the door open, glaring at her. "Talk about what? How you're replacing me with your favorite daughters?" Mom's expression grew stern. "Don't be so dramatic. Nancy and Eric are going through a tough time, and they need our help." "Our helps?" I scoffed, crossing my arms. "More like my help. I'm the one paying half the bills here while Nancy just floats around, taking advantage of everyone." "Watch your mouth," Mom snapped sharply. "Nancy is having a hard time. The least you could do is show some compassion." I let out a bitter laugh. "Compassion? That's funny coming from you. When was the last time you showed me any's?" Her eyes narrowed, and her face hardened. "You ungrateful brat. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me?" I cut her off, my voice rising. "All you do is criticize me, put me down, and favor Nancy no matter what she does. That's enough." Mom shouted, her face red with anger. "I won't have you talking to me like that in my own house." "Your house?" I shot back. "I'm the one keeping this place together with my paychecks, while you bend over backward for Nancy." Her face twisted with anger. "If you can't show your sister some kindness, maybe it's time you found your own place." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. "You're kicking me out?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "If that's what it takes for you to learn some respect," she said coldly. Something inside me snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I'll leave. But don't come crying to me when Nancy and her useless husband drain you dry." Mom's eyes widened in shock, but before she could say anything, I slammed the door in her face. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks as I sank to the floor, feeling like my world was falling apart. After that fight, I knew there was no going back. I had to leave, start fresh, and get away from the toxic environment of my family. It hurt, but I couldn't keep letting their favoritism and cruelty drag me down. I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Brenda, trying hard to keep from crying again. "Hey, I need a huge favor," I said, my voice shaky. "Can I stay at your place for a while?" Brenda's voice came through, full of concern. "Of course, Carol. What's going on? It's a long story, I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I'll explain everything when I get there. Can I come over tonight? Absolutely, Brenda said, without hesitation. My door is always open for you. Hearing her comforting words gave me some relief. I started packing my things, but it was harder than I expected. As I folded clothes and boxed up my belongings, I couldn't stop thinking about all the memories in this house. This was the home I had worked so hard to keep running, only to be pushed aside like I didn't matter. Tears stung my eyes as I thought about all the times I sacrificed to make things work, holidays and birthdays where my efforts were ignored while Nancy got all of Mom's attention. I blinked the tears away, telling myself I couldn't break down now. I needed to stay strong and move on, to build a new life away from the family drama that had held me back for so long. A knock on my door startled me. "Carol, it's Eric," said Nancy's husband. His voice made me tense up immediately. I didn't trust him and knew his smooth-talking ways too well. "What do you want?" I asked sharply. "Can we talk?" he replied in an overly calm tone. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I scoffed and opened the door, glaring at him. "The only misunderstanding is you two thinking you can just show up and take over my life." Eric held up his hands, trying to look harmless. "I get that this is a tough situation, but we really need your help right now. Nancy and I are going through a rough time." "Rough times you brought on yourselves," I snapped, anger flaring. "Don't try to guilt me into enabling your bad choices." His face hardened. "Watch your tone, Carol. We're family, and families should support each other." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, tell that to Mom and Nancy. They've made it very clear where I stand in this family." Before Eric could say another word, I slammed the door in his face. I pushed past Eric, dragging my suitcase behind me. "I'm done with all of you. Don't even try to get me back," I said firmly. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I felt a strange weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in ages, there was a tiny spark of hope for a future where I wouldn't be constantly criticized or taken for granted. When I arrived at Brenda's apartment, she opened the door and pulled me into a warm hug. Taking my suitcase, she guided me inside. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Carol," she said, her eyes full of kindness. I gave her a small, weak smile, holding back tears. "Thank you for letting me stay. I just couldn't stay with them anymore." Brenda led me to her cozy living room, which felt safe and inviting, so different from the tense, suffocating air of my family's house. "Make yourself at home," she said, pointing to the soft couch. "Can I get you something to drink? Maybe a glass of wine?" I shook my head and sank into the cushions. "Just some water would be great." "Thanks." As Brenda went to the kitchen, I sat quietly, taking a deep breath. The reality of the last few hours began to sink in. I was officially on my own, free from the toxic cycle that had drained me for so long. When Brenda returned with a glass of water, she handed it to me with a comforting smile. "Whenever you're ready, I'm here to listen," she said softly. I nodded, took a sip of water, and exhaled slowly. Finally, I began to tell her everything. Mom's constant favoritism, Nancy's entitled behavior, and the explosive fight that ended with me being kicked out. The words poured out of me, and Brenda listened with a furrowed brow, clearly upset on my behalf. "I can't believe they treated you like that," she said, her voice full of anger. "You've done so much for them, and they just pushed you aside like you didn't matter." "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It hurts, but I can't keep going through that. It's too much." Brenda reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing, Carol. It's time you started living for yourself." Her words struck a chord deep inside me, sparking a sense of determination. For so long, I had put my own happiness and well-being aside for a family that didn't seem to care. But now, that chapter of my life was over. Over the next few days, I started settling into Brenda's spare bedroom. As I unpacked my things, I realized this was the beginning of something new, something better. I finally had the chance to build a life that was my own. I was discovering parts of myself that had been buried under the pressure of my family's expectations. Every item I unpacked and put away made me feel a little freer. I started exploring new interests and trying things I'd always wanted to do. I joined a local book club and met people who loved reading as much as I did. I even signed up for a beginner's pottery class. Doing things just for fun felt amazing. There was no one to judge me or criticize my choices. I was free to enjoy myself. At work, I threw myself into my projects with new energy. I shared my ideas confidently and even impressed my boss with my dedication. For the first time in years, I felt proud of myself, not because I was pleasing someone else, but because I was doing something that mattered to me. I was starting to see my worth, separate from what my family thought. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of my past slowly lifted. It was replaced with a feeling of freedom I'd never known before. I was finally living for myself, and the future seemed bright. Then, a few weeks after moving in with Brenda, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Every call was either Mom or Nancy leaving desperate voicemails, begging me to answer. I ignored them. I wasn't ready to reopen that part of my life. I was healing, and I didn't want to risk getting pulled back into their drama. One evening, as Brenda and I were eating takeout and chatting, my phone rang again. I rolled my eyes and reached to silence it, but Brenda gave me a gentle, firm look. "You should probably answer it," she said with a nod. "Maybe they actually have something important to say." With a heavy sigh, I picked up the phone. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked. "Carol." Thank goodness, Mom's voice came through, frantic and panicked. "We're in big trouble here." I felt a strange mix of emotions, bitterness, satisfaction, and pity. "Oh, really? What's the problem? I can't handle things without me." "It's not just that," she said, her voice strained. "We're behind on the mortgage and the utilities are about to be cut off." A dry, humorless laugh escaped me. "Gee," I said sarcastically. "Wonder how that happened," I said coldly. "Maybe you shouldn't have kicked out the one person who was actually helping with the bills." "Carol, please," Mom begged, her voice desperate. "We need your help. We're barely getting by." A dark satisfaction stirred inside me. After years of feeling ignored and underappreciated, it was almost satisfying to see them dealing with the consequences. "You know, Mom, this is exactly what I warned you about," I replied. "You chose Nancy over me, and now you're paying the price." "I made a mistake, okay?" Mom's voice cracked, full of emotion. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. Just please help us this one time." I could hear Nancy sobbing in the background. A small part of me felt a pang of sympathy, but the years of pain and neglect were too much. I couldn't let myself get dragged back into their chaos. "Sorry, Mom," I said firmly. "You told me to leave, and I did. Now it's your turn to figure things out on your own." Before she could respond, I ended the call. The texts and voicemails came flooding in, but I ignored them. I was done with that chapter of my life. Brenda watched me with a mix of concern and understanding. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said with quiet strength. "It's just satisfying to finally see them dealing with the consequences." "You're standing up for yourself," I added, feeling a mix of freedom and guilt. "They made their bed. Now they have to lie in it." Brenda gave me a supportive smile. "You're absolutely right, Carol. You have every right to stand your ground. They need to face the results of their choices." Over the next few weeks, the calls became more frantic. I learned, through Brenda and some neighborhood gossip, that Eric had been hiding major debts, which had led to his job loss and worsened their financial struggles. While a small part of me felt guilty for not stepping in, I knew that helping would only continue the dysfunction. Sometimes, you have to let people face the consequences of their actions, no matter how painful it might be. In the months that followed, I heard more about how things at my old home were falling apart. The utilities were shut off, debt collectors were constantly at their door, and the once neat yard I had worked so hard to maintain was now overgrown and messy. A strange, twisted sense of satisfaction flickered inside me. After years of being treated like I didn't matter, it felt like justice was finally being served. I felt invisible in my own home for so long, and watching them face the fallout felt like poetic justice. One evening, Brenda came home from work with a concerned look on her face. "I saw your mom at the grocery store today," she said cautiously, watching me closely. She looked rough. I raised an eyebrow, unsure if I wanted to know more. Oh. How so? Brenda sighed and shook her head. Her clothes were messy, her hair was all over the place, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, a flicker of guilt tugged at me, but I quickly shoved it down. Well, maybe now she'll understand what it's like to struggle, I said, trying to sound indifferent. Brenda gave me a kind but serious look. I know you're still hurting, Carol, but don't let their mistakes consume you. You've done so well moving forward. Don't let them pull you back. I nodded, taking her words to heart, though a small part of me couldn't help but feel some satisfaction. After years of being ignored and mistreated, it felt like life was finally balancing the scales. A few days later, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and against my better judgment, I answered it. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Carol, it's Nancy," came a strained voice. She sounded tired and scared. Bitterness rose in me as I gripped the phone. "What do you want, Nancy?" I need your help," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything is falling apart, and I don't know what to do." I couldn't help but scoff. "Funny. That's exactly how I felt when you and Mom kicked me out like I didn't matter." I know, Nancy sobbed, her desperation obvious. "I was so wrong, Carol. Please, you have to help us. We're desperate." A twisted part of me savored her distress. This was the moment I'd imagined countless times, the moment they'd feel what I had felt. "Why should I help you, Nancy?" I asked coldly. "You and Mom made it pretty clear I wasn't part of the family anymore." "Please, Carol," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'll do anything. I'm sorry for how we treated you. Just please, don't let us end up on the streets." I could hear the raw desperation in her voice, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sympathy for her. Almost. "You know what, Nancy?" I said, my voice steady and firm. I spoke, my voice cold and firm. "This is exactly what you deserve. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be left out in the cold." With that, I ended the call. A strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. They had created this mess, and I wasn't going to save them. As weeks turned into months, I continued to hear about how things were falling apart at my old home. Brenda would sometimes update me with the latest gossip, unpaid bills piling up, debt collectors constantly showing up, and even rumors that Nancy and Eric were getting involved in shady activities just to survive. A part of me felt a dark satisfaction watching their lives unravel. After years of being treated like I didn't matter, it felt like justice. But another part of me couldn't completely ignore the sadness tugging at my heart. As much as they had hurt me, they were still my family. Seeing them spiral downward wasn't easy to witness. One evening, while Brenda and I were catching up over a glass of wine, she gently brought up the topic. "Carol, I know you're still hurting from everything that happened," she said softly, "but do you think it might be time to let go of some of that anger?" I sighed, swirling the wine in my glass. "I don't know, Brenda. They hurt me so much for so long. Part of me feels like they deserve everything that's happening." Brenda reached across the table and gave my hand a comforting squeeze. "I get it, believe me, I do. But holding on to all that bitterness will only end up hurting you in the long run." Her words struck a chord. As satisfying as it was to see my family face the consequences, I realized that holding on to my resentment might keep me stuck in the past. Was I really any better if I let that anger keep growing? The next day, as I was preparing for an important presentation at work, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the phone, before finally answering. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Carol." Mom's voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I don't even know where to start. I steeled myself, expecting excuses or another attempt at manipulation. But instead, her voice softened, and I could hear quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry, Carol," she said, her words trembling. "I was a terrible mother to you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." Her words caught me off guard. For the first time, she seemed genuinely remorseful, taking responsibility for the pain she had caused me. My resolve began to waver as I listened. Her voice was full of regret as she said, "Please, let me try. I'll do anything to earn your forgiveness." In that moment, something shifted inside me. As much as I had taken satisfaction in their struggles, I realized that holding on to all this bitterness was only hurting me. I took a deep breath, and my voice came out softer than I expected. "Mom, I can't pretend everything is okay. You really hurt me." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." I exhaled deeply, feeling a heavy weight lift from my chest. Letting go of all the resentment I'd carried for so long suddenly felt possible. "Okay, Mom," I said finally. "Let's start over, one step at a time." I knew it wouldn't be easy, but in that moment, I understood that real healing would come through forgiveness, not just for them, but for myself too. After that emotional conversation, I felt hopeful about rebuilding our relationship, even if it would take time. Over the next few months, Mom worked hard to make amends. She invited me over for weekly dinners, where she truly listened as I opened up about the pain and neglect I had endured over the years. Her genuine remorse was clear, and though it was hard, it felt healing to finally be heard. Nancy and Eric, on the other hand, kept their distance. The last I heard, they had moved into a small apartment and were slowly rebuilding their lives. While part of me still felt resentment toward them, I knew that holding on to it wouldn't help me move forward. Meanwhile, I was thriving in my independence. At work, I took on a side project that let me show off my creativity and problem-solving skills. My boss noticed my efforts, and soon there were whispers about a promotion. In my personal life, I dove into hobbies I had neglected for too long. I joined a book club and enjoyed lively discussions and exploring new stories. I even started a pottery class, finding peace in shaping clay with my hands. Brenda remained my rock through it all, cheering me on every step of the way. One evening, as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony, she smiled at me warmly. "I'm so proud of you, Carol," she said. "You've come such a long way." I smiled back, feeling a comforting warmth from her words. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said to Brenda, my voice full of gratitude. "You were there for me when my own family wasn't." As the months went by, I felt myself truly letting go of the past. The anger and resentment that had once consumed me faded away, replaced by a new sense of confidence and self-worth. One evening, as I was getting ready to go out with some coworkers, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you, Carol. You've grown into such a strong, independent woman, and I'm honored to be part of your life again." Tears filled my eyes as I read her message, but this time, they weren't tears of pain or anger. They were tears of gratitude and healing. I had finally broken free from the toxic cycle that had once held me back. I wasn't defined by the neglect or mistreatment of my past anymore. Now, I was creating my own life, surrounded by people who truly appreciated and supported me. As I stepped out into the warm evening air, a deep sense of peace washed over me. The journey had been long and hard, but I had come out of it stronger, wiser, and more resilient. For the first time, I was living for myself, and it felt amazing.